Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar tonight on NAATI recertification. I am very lucky indeed to have Aurelie Sheehan with me, and she is the manager for certification policy and development at NAATI. So this is as good as it gets, folks. We'll be hearing it from first hand from Aurelie. Aurelie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Fatih, for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start, folks. You've got a couple of handouts there that you can download tonight. So you have the NAATI PD catalog there. If you already don't have one, you can just click on it and download it. And as always, I have put a copy of the Ausit Code of Ethics there for you. If you already haven't seen it in the last 3 days, you can download it and have a look at it again. That can be your read for this week. Okay, so you've got the PD catalog there, as well as the Ausit Code of Ethics. This will be an interactive webinar, so please do send your questions and comments through. We will try to address as many as we can, but we do have 550 attendees registered today, so please do excuse us if we do not answer all your questions tonight. But we will collate them at the end and then email them to you in the form of an FAQ, probably within the week or so after I touch base with Aurelie and hopefully get some answers from her too, as she is the expert. If you, for whatever reason, are late or you weren't able to attend today's webinar, the recording will be made available and you'll be notified of this tomorrow with an email too. But also we will be making this available for easy access on YouTube as well, on both NAATI's YouTube channel as well as All Graduates Conversations YouTube channel. All right, so I'd like to also thank you all for showing a great interest in tonight's webinar. We have 550 attendees, and so thank you very much for your interest. Just one moment. Okay. So the topics we'll be covering today will be the recertification process, and then the work practice requirements, followed by the professional development requirements, and we'll be actually finishing off with a simulation of submitting PD and work practice evidence. So we'll have a little bit of a chat about what recertification is, what's required to recertify, and we will actually finish off with Aurelie going through step by step how you can actually claim your PDs, how you can provide evidence for your work practice and other PDs as well. And we have created, or I should say, NAATI has been very kind to create a test candidate for us. His name is very interestingly John Smith, and John Smith will be uploading some of his PD evidence as well as work practice evidence to the My NAATI portal with Aurelie's assistance at the end of towards the end of the webinar. All right, so a little bit of an informative session, and then followed by a simulation of how we can actually use the My NAATI portal to claim, to upload the evidence and then claim our points and work practice requirements. All right, without further ado, let's continue. So, Aurelie, what is NAATI recertification and why was it implemented?
Yes, well, first, thank you very much for everyone to attend this session. I'm really pleased to see there are so many people, so it's fantastic. The NAATI recertification is a process. Basically, when practitioners are issued with a new NAATI credential, these credentials are valid for a period of 3 years. And before the end of this period, they will have to submit a recertification application to maintain their credentials. So all the credentials expire after 3 years. So the process of recertification is basically a way for practitioners to demonstrate that they have kept active throughout this 3-year period, basically translating or interpreting regularly and meeting some minimum requirements, which we'll talk about. And also, it's a way for them to show that they have kept engaged with the industry through professional development and other industry events, such as being part of an audit committee or things like that, for instance. So why do we have the recertification process now? Well, a little bit of history. I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with the different stages NATI went through. So before 2018, there was a revalidation process already in place, which had started in 2007. And before that, there was no revalidation process whatsoever. So the credentials were valid for life. So there was no way to really check if practitioners were keeping up to a professional standard in their practice or in their development activities. So in 2007, a revalidation process was introduced. And so all practitioners who were accredited from that date on had to go through that revalidation process, which was pretty similar to the current recertification process. Now, with the introduction of recertification and the whole certification system, which was introduced in 2018, all certified practitioners have to go through that recertification process. So everybody has to give evidence of their the maintenance of their practice and of their development. So it's a way to set a professional standard across the industry.
Which brings us to our next slide, and you've already answered, you've already touched on most of these points, but just to reiterate why we've got to make sure that they're consistently working, constantly developing their ethical decision-making, constantly developing their professional skills, making sure that they're maintaining their language, and also contributing to the overall translating and interpreting profession.
Yeah, that's correct. I haven't mentioned the ethical knowledge. This is part of the minimum requirements. As we'll see later on in the section, there are three main areas where practitioners have to keep up their skills or give evidence of this. And one of them includes a subcategory, which is about ethics. So everything related to their knowledge of the Aussie Code of Ethics, or ASIA for sign language, or I mean, if they're based in New Zealand, it might be, it would still be the Aussie Code actually. So yeah, they still need to be engaged on that level as well, and they only need to provide really one activity for that category.
And we said that practitioners need to recertify every 3 years, and the cycle you can see on your screen there as well. Take us through the actual cycle, please, Aurelie. So you get your credential, you let's say you sit your NATI test, you're successful, and you become a certified practitioner.
Yes, so you will be notified by email. You'll receive your result letter and your credential letter with a certificate as well. And as part of this process, you will also be able to create your My NATI account and to log into this to access a variety of tools. And among those, you have access to the logbooks to enter your PD activities or your work practice, and we'll look at that in the simulation. So when you get your credentials, they're valid for 3 years. So then you have to keep up your knowledge, you have to regularly translate or interpret. And after the period of 3 years, you will submit your recertification application, and all this happens via My NATI. So no more handwritten records or papers, it's all digital. So it's actually a very easy way to maintain your records without, and you can basically do that as you go. And we recommend that you do that as you go rather than wait at the end of the 3-year period. So once the recertification application has been submitted, it is assessed by NATI. On the graph, it's within a period of 6 weeks. That's the latest. And then if you're successful, then your credentials will be valid again for a period of 3 years. And then we start the cycle again.
Very good. And then we start the cycle again, and you can interpret and or translate for another 3 years. And then just making sure you're keeping up to date with everything again.
Yeah, and just
very good.
Sorry, Fanny, sorry. No, when you actually get the successful outcome of your recertification, you will also get a new stamp or a new ID card if you're an interpreter, and that's free of charge.
That's a very important point to make. So you will get a new stamp if you're a translator, and it'll have a new expiry date on it. And as an interpreter, you will get a new ID card, and that's I guess that's included in the recertification fee, we could say.
Yeah, it's not an additional cost. It's part of the recertification application fee. Yeah.
Very good. So what are the recertification requirements?
So as you can see on the slide, there are 2 main categories, and this will be in the MyNATI portal. The first one is work practice. So the work practice requirements will vary if you're a translator or an interpreter. If you're a translator, over the period of 3 years, the minimum volume of words to translate is 30,000 words. And and if you're an interpreter, it will be 120 assignments or hours. So yeah, perfect. Thank you for that. So that's the minimum requirement. You will have to meet these requirements for each credential that you have. So if you, for instance, a translator from Spanish into English and English into Spanish, you will have to meet those requirements for both directions. So 30,000 words for one direction, 30,000 for the other.
Got a couple of questions now. Has NATI reduced the required number of PD points from 120 to 80 due to COVID-19? We were going to comment on this already. Can you tell us about this COVID-19 adjustment, please?
Yes, so I mean, we've been faced with unprecedented circumstances. So NATI has decided to pretty much write off 2020. So if 2020 is part of the recertification period, then you will only be required to provide 20,000 words for translation or 80 assignments for interpreting or hours. And for the professional development, which I haven't touched on yet, it will be reduced from 120 points to 80 points as well.
Again, just on this, got a couple of questions. Can we recertify our translation and interpreting credentials as part of one application? I guess we'll show that. Yeah, so there would be, you would have to submit 3 logbooks, you know, I would have to double check. As part of the professional development, you would only have to submit 1 regardless of the number of credentials that you have. I would have to double check if you have to do 3 different ones or just 1. It would be all within the MyNATI portal, so the process would be pretty smooth and intuitive. Well, in our simulation, we will have our simulation practitioner, John Smith, has all the credentials, is able to translate into both directions, and is also an interpreter, which will answer that question as well. You can make all the applications pretty much at the same time, or you can upload them all at the same time. Got another very quick question. My certificates, or I'm assuming this means my certification is due in November. When shall I renew? I have both certified provisional interpreter and certified translation certificates. Do I need to meet requirements for both certificates? Thanks. So if you want to maintain both credentials, you would have to meet the requirements for both in terms of work practice. As I said, for professional development, you only need to
fill in one logbook, so that would be 120 points regardless of how many credentials you have. Now, if your certification expires in November, you would pretty much have to submit a recertification application now in the coming months. And we'll see that in the My90 portal as well. You can clearly see the date from which you can actually start to submit your recertification application. And generally, it's within a period of 3 months. So you're basically in that period at the moment.
Very good. So we'll have a look at how you can log on to the My90 portal during our simulation. I think practitioners, if you already are not familiar with the portal, it is very important that you do make yourself familiar with the My90 portal, and you can actually have access to all this information and answers to all these questions that you have in your heads directly at the My90 portal. But not to worry, we will have a little bit of a play with the My90 portal just in a few moments. Okay, continuing on with the logbook.
So the logbook, and again with the simulation, I think it will clarify probably lots of these points as well. As you will see, so to log in an entry of work practice for translation, you basically just need to click on one button and it opens a pop-up window where you can enter the details of the assignment. So the date of the completion of the assignment, it can vary here on the slide. As you can see, it can be the last day of the week or the month. You need to associate a date that's in relation with that assignment. And then you need to indicate the number of words. For most translation assignments, you would probably have an email or a work order which confirms the exact number. So that's great if you have that. If not, you can give an approximation. And of course, there's also a field to give a brief description of the assignment. It shouldn't be longer than 200 words. So yeah, like the example on the slide can just be completion of translation for a business partnership proposal, translation of app strings, or translation of a press release, that kind of thing. And for interpreting, it's pretty much the same approach, except that you're logging in information about an interpreting assignment, and you won't indicate a number of words, but it might be a number of hours in that case.
Yep, that's just there. I've got quite a good question for you now, Aurelie. Living in regional Victoria, I haven't been able to find any PD courses. The ones in the city are very expensive due to travel and accommodation. Is there any consideration for regional interpreters and translators?
Yes. So if, for instance, you are not able to provide enough evidences of your professional development or your work practice, what we recommend is that you still submit an application so we can assess it on a case-by-case basis. There may be extensions granted based on that. Now, if you can't find any professional development activities, face-to-face activities, you can also look at webinars or anything that's available online in Australia and outside Australia that would be absolutely considered as a valid activity.
We're going to have a look at what kind of activities can be actually used for PD. So, you don't necessarily have to access face-to-face PD opportunities if you're in regional Victoria, especially due to COVID-19.
Yeah.
As you can see tonight, almost all of the PD has become online, especially if you go onto the Conversations website. There's a lot of webinars there. We'll also be introducing courses very soon and upcoming webinars. And I'm not afraid to say that there's also AUSIT website as well that you can access webinars for interpreting and translation. So, if you wanted to access PD activities and events, you can actually access quite a lot these days online, whether it be live or on demand.
Yeah, I'm also thinking of, even outside Australia, there are lots of translators and interpreters community websites which offer webinars as well. Or even if you use CAT tools, all the biggest providers would have webinars about this as well. So the choice is really broad. And yeah, there are lots of different ways of doing training.
Definitely. I for example, I watched about a 60-minute video on a CAT tool the other day. It was their instruction video on YouTube, and that could be claimed as PD, couldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that was free of charge. So there is quite a lot out there for regional practitioners. All right, just continuing on from this slide. Within regards to reference letters, like how can interpreters and translators provide work practice evidence with reference letters?
Yes, absolutely. There are different ways of doing it. I guess if you're a practitioner who works on an ongoing basis with a particular employer, or you're an interpreter in a hospital on a weekly basis, you can certainly ask for a letter of reference from your employer or your main client, highlighting the volume of work that you've done during your recertification period, but also clearly indicating the language combination or direction you've been working in as well. So that's valid for both translation or interpreter. So sometimes if you're very active and you work mainly for one employer, you might be an on-site translator, for instance, for a company, you might just need one reference letter to meet all your requirements. So it's a very effective way to log in, your work practice. You might just need one entry and reach already the 30,000 minimum.
Again, we'll show that in the simulation. For example, if you're working for an agency or you're working as an in-house interpreter translator, all you need is a reference letter from your employer or agency. And those of you that are working for all graduates, you'd be able to automatically download this letter from the interpreter's mobile app when your recertification time approaches, I believe, because as a practicing interpreter, that's what I did. I downloaded it from the interpreter's mobile app, which was pretty easy. I've got another question here. Yes, please.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to add on this. We've mentioned letter of references from employers or agencies. A letter from your accountant might as well be a valid evidence if you can't have anything else, and that's something you can provide. That would also be considered.
I've got a question here. What about voluntary work without pay?
Yeah, that's fine too. Again, you would need to be able to prove what you've done. So depending on the voluntary work that you do, if it's volunteer translation through a platform, they might be able to provide you with an email that you've received for that particular assignment, or you might be able to get a certificate from them or even a letter. Now, if you don't have anything to back this up, and for instance, you've been doing voluntary interpreting for a community group and you don't necessarily have a document you can add to your logbook, you could also ask your community leader to write a letter to explain that you've been helping out with interpreting on a voluntary basis. That would be a relevant evidence as well.
For example, you may be doing a lot of translation work for Red Cross as a volunteer. They could give you on a letterhead a letter stating how much work you've done. Again, just like the ones here, when you did it, what you did, if it was translation or interpreting, how many hours it was for, how many words it was. So they can again give you some kind of a reference letter. And for example, I know quite a lot of interpreters volunteered their time during the lockdown at the Ministry of Housing flats in some of the suburbs in Melbourne when they were under strict lockdown. And I know that a lot of interpreters provided their services voluntarily. And you're saying that because I know that they just went there and said, I'm an interpreter, how can I help, who can I help? If they're not able to get a reference letter from an organization, they can find a community leader and then get some kind of a reference from them.
Yeah, look, it's an example. We do recommend that you provide evidences of your work practice or professional development. If there is a particular situation where you actually can't provide that evidence, you can still submit it in your application, but the recommended process is to provide some evidence. I haven't mentioned the auditing of the application, but we need evidences in case your application is audited. So we audit about 5 to 10% of the application we receive. This is generated by the system, so it's purely automated. There's no, it's not human decision. And so if your application is picked and you actually haven't provided evidences, we might require them. So that's why we recommend to do it as you log in your entries. And again, to come back to what you were saying, if it's a community type of activity and you can't really get an official letter, but you've been working with a community group and there's a community leader, they could write something for you specifying what you have done, and that would be considered as a relevant evidence.
Thank you very much for that. All right, I want to move forward because we do want to still have enough time for the simulation. So we'll continue. So that was the work practice criteria. Now we're going to talk about the professional development criteria.
So the professional development is linked to the PD catalog provided on the NATI website. We'll see it's also accessible from the portal, so everything's integrated, which is very handy. For the professional development, you need to meet a minimum requirement of 30 points per main section. One is about maintenance of knowledge and skill. We've got everything here, fantastic. So skills and development and knowledge. So it's mainly around training and how you keep up your knowledge for your practice. Then there's a second category, which is industry engagement. So it's pretty self-explanatory. This is how you engage with the industry. So are you part of an audit committee? Are you attending an AGM? Or are you
a trainer?
A trainer, that kind of things. As a category, there's a subcategory which is for ethics. And so you need to meet a minimum, generally it's one activity covers the minimum requirement. We can see that in the demonstration as well. And then maintenance of language, which is how you keep up with your language knowledge. And I mean, it's relevant for all practitioners, regardless of the direction they work in, if they're translators. Obviously, if you are working into your lot and you're based in Australia, this is even more relevant. Like, you will need to keep up with the evolution of your language and the current terminology, and yeah. So this is something that you need to provide evidences of.
And we already said that there is a professional development catalog available to download from your GoToWebinar app. It is also on the NATI website, but it is also on the My NATI portal as well. And when you have a look at the My NATI portal, we will do in just a couple of minutes now, everything's categorized there as well. So it is very straightforward. There's a lot of drop-down menus. So it is a very, very helpful and user-friendly portal. So congratulations to NATI on building such a portal, actually.
Thank you. It's very intuitive to use as well. So if you'll see very soon, if you're not very tech savvy or not sure about how to use it, once you've done it a couple of times, it's a very easy process, very intuitive. So it will save you a lot of time.
So yes, you will see a lot of categories there in the 3 different categories, and you'll see a lot of points for each category. But of course, there's so many other things that's out there that could potentially be used towards PD. So there's under each category, I believe, that practitioners are able to nominate additional relevant PD activities which are not listed in each section. So if they think that it doesn't necessarily belong in a category, they can nominate for each section. If we have a look, it's under 1.11, 2.16, 2.21, and 3.13, for each of those categories we just mentioned, they can actually nominate another category in that section.
Yeah, that's correct. So it is not restricted to what's available in the catalog. There are lots of options in the catalog, which helps you find activities and have variety as well around the activities you engage with. However, there is this option. So as long as it is relevant to your practice, to your languages, these will be considered as well. So it's definitely not restricted to what you can see in the catalog.
Quick question here. Does a trip to the country of your second language count towards maintenance of language? We will show that very soon. The quick answer to that is yes. Okay,
yeah,
but
yeah. Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
As long as it's the language you used for your translation or interpreting work, that would definitely count towards that, yes.
Very good. All right. Just before we start our simulation, keeping evidence. For each entry, we said that you will need to select the PD category and requirement, nominate the date you completed the activity, write a short description of the activity, like attended a NAATI recertification webinar with Aurelie Sheehan.
Yes, so I think it will be easier actually to simulate because you can see how we do that. But yes, these are the fields that you need to fill in, and they're all required. So yes.
All right, well, that's it for the presentation. I'm going to now hand my screen over to Aurelie. So now we have created a test candidate. His name is John Smith, and I believe he is a German interpreter translator.
That's correct.
We're going to now show you how John is going to be showing evidence of work practice as well as PD. Over to you now, Aurelie.
Thank you very much. Do I have access already?
Clarissa will sort out your access very soon.
Yes. So as we're sorting this out, I just want to mention that the portal, the demonstration I'm going to do, uses test account in our testing environment. So it will not reflect the minimum requirements in terms of Word or in terms of PD points. It will only show the requirements for 1 year. However, when you log into your portal, you should be able to see the total requirement for your recertification period. So just flagging that now, and I will share. Thank you very much. So this is the login page to the My NAATI portal. So if you already have an account, you would be familiar with this. You just need to sign in. If you've been recently certified and haven't created your account yet, you can access this page from www.naati.com.au/mynaati. And when you're on this page, you can create your account by clicking on click here to register. So I'm just going to sign in here. So it is a test environment, so you might see a few funny things here. Just don't pay attention to them. So this is the main, just going to see if I can remove that. Yes. So this is the main screen. So it's your dashboard, and from there you can access a variety of tools. We'll be focusing on my logbook today. However, I'll just give you a quick overview so you can update your details. These are the details that will display on the NAATI directory. If you elect to do so, you can also decide not to, and you can do that from this section. Changing your password to your account if you need to. In this section, My Credentials, you will be able to access your certification letter, which you receive once you have been awarded a credential. You can also download your certification certificate.
So Aurelie, let's say someone wanted my credentials. I was applying for a job and I wanted an electronic format of it, or I kind of lost my certification. So that's where I would access it?
You would access it there. If we have time at the end of the session, I can demonstrate. But basically, you can just see your credentials and then download them directly from there. So it's very easy to access them.
Magnificent.
Now, if you've just sat a test or you have submitted an application to sit another certification test, you can manage that from here, like selecting a date for your test, or here you can access your results as well. Any payment that you do is accessible from here. Basically, you can have a record of your invoice in this section. This is limited to our examiner and role players. So if you are not a role player or an examiner, you wouldn't see that on your portal. And then for any applications you need to submit, this is where you go, and that includes your recertification application. Unfortunately, I won't be able to demonstrate that part due to the nature of the testing environment I am using. However, we will now focus on the logbook. So I'll just click here. So this is where you will log in your work practice and your professional development. So as you can see here, our mock practitioner, John Smith, holds several credentials. So he's a certified translator from English into German, but also from German into English. And he's also a certified interpreter in the same language combination. So for him, it means he will have to fill in 4 logbooks if he wants to maintain his 3 credentials. So one for each credential for the work practice, and only one for all his credentials when it comes to professional development. So let's start with the professional development, and then I will show you how to enter work practice for one of his translation credential and also for the interpreter credential.
Just to clarify, Aurelie, if I have those 3 credentials, I only have to do one professional development logbook for all 3 credentials.
That's correct.
I don't have to do a separate logbook. It's not 120 points for each credential. It's 120 points for all my credentials.
That's correct. For professional development, there's only one logbook, and then you need work practice evidences for each of your credentials. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So I'll just go here. So as you can see here, I've referred to that earlier in the presentation. You can see the start date of your certification, your credential. So that's when basically your recertification cycle starts. And then you can see the expiry date of your credentials. That's the end of your certification cycle. And here in the middle, this is the period from which you can start applying for recertification. So you have a period of 3 months basically to do that. Now here we have the pie chart, which will get updated as you enter PD activities in your logbook, and it's an easy way to track your progress. So as I mentioned, it only shows the minimum requirement for 1 year here, but in normal circumstances, it would be 120 points. And currently, if 2020 is part of your recertification cycle, it will be 80 points. So as this gets updated, you will also see the requirements getting updated there. So you can easily see at one glance if you've already met the minimum requirement. So the numbers will be slightly higher in a normal account.
So it'll automatically show you there as you are uploading your evidence, and then you can see what you need to focus on. If you've already gotten, let's say, 50, 60 points from skills development, and you're lacking points in maintenance of language, there's really no need to go and do more PD on skills development and knowledge. You probably need more evidence of maintenance of language, and it's a really good way of guiding you where you need to do more, where you need to provide more evidence on.
Yeah, and so the minimum requirement for each main category will be 30 points for a full cycle. However, it doesn't mean you have to stick to 30 or 120 overall. Some practitioners might be at 300 points, because they're very active, very engaged, they do lots of things. And so they're accumulating a lot of points. You can keep, you can keep logging them in. I think that's even more relevant for work practice if you've exceeded the minimum requirement, you can actually get more points if you exceed that requirement. I would have to double check the catalog. I don't have the numbers in my head right now. However, you can, if you, for instance, I think it's around 70,000 words, but don't quote me on that. You might get an extra 20 points because you've actually exceeded the minimum requirement. So that's an acknowledgement of the extra work as well. But that's for work practice. So I'll just come back to professional development. So here, as you can see, there's a link to the professional development catalog. So if I click here, I can actually access the PDF version. This is the same version as you would find on our website. And here you can clearly see each category. So skill and development and knowledge. So you've got the category number here, the description of the activity, and then the requirements. So requirements are either a number of hours for a particular event. It might also be a number of words. If we look at the next category, for instance, if you've written or published articles, there would be a word requirement there. As we mentioned earlier on, this is the extra category here, 1.11, for instance, for the first category, which is the one where you can use to log extra activities which are not listed in the catalog. And we've got a similar one for each category. Here we've got the category for ethics. And finally, the maintenance of language. So I'll go back to our logbook now. So if John Smith wants to log in an activity, so for instance, we talked about maintenance of language. So he's gone for a trip to Germany and spent a couple of weeks there. So he wants to log this in. So you just click on add activity and then you choose your category.
He's actually spent 4 weeks there, Aurélie.
4 weeks, yeah. So the category for travel is travel to your country is 3.4. So you just select this, and then as soon as you've selected the category number, you can see the description, so you can double check you've chosen the right number. If you don't remember the number, I recommend you have either a printout of the catalog with you, or you just have the catalog open on another tab so you can have a quick check. And then the requirements, so we've said it's either the duration or the volume of words. So it's gone there for over 4 weeks or just 4 weeks, maybe.
1 to 4 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, so that's worth 10 points. And he's come back the 1st of July 2021. The dates are slightly different, doesn't matter. The process is the same. So that's the completion date of this activity. So here we can just type in trip to Germany. The note section is if you want to add more information about a particular activity. You've got a limit of 200 words. So if it's a bit longer, you can use it. You can use that section. Now we need to provide some evidence of this activity. A plane ticket or booking confirmation is absolutely acceptable. So I've got a plane ticket. I'll just click here. So you see that's how it looks at the bottom. And here in my files, I've got plane ticket here. I won't open it, but this is the plane ticket that is for the trip to Germany. So it's relevant to this activity. And then you can see here. Once you have done that, you can just click on add. And automatically the pie chart will update. And you can then see your PD activity here. So if you had some notes, you would see them there as well. You can decide to edit this activity or delete it if it's actually the wrong activity, for instance. And now you can see here in this example, again, the minimum is 10 points for this particular example. It would be higher normally, but we can see the minimum requirement has been met. So it's already ticked off, and you can see that this category here has already reached the minimum requirement. Now, if you had more points, it would keep updating the total here. and that's absolutely fine as well. So now I can give you another example of an activity. For instance, one of those activities which are not listed in the catalog. So I'm just thinking, for instance, reading a book about translation theory, that would be absolutely acceptable as an evidence or as an activity of professional development. So John has actually read a book on German translation practice, and so it would fall under the first category because he's maintaining his knowledge and skills. So this is the additional one. Practitioners are invited to nominate additional relevant PD activities. They all attract a minimum of 10 points. And let's say he's read the book by the 1st of April 2021. Here we go. Now, we need to provide some form of description for this because there's no certificate attached to that activity. So what you can provide in a case like this is, well, first the references to the book, also a little blurb about the book itself and how it contributed to your practice or your development. As proof of evidence, you can add the receipt of the book. So I'll just demonstrate that. So I've got it in a Word file. So I'll just actually open the file this time because I'll have to do a bit of copy pasting to meet the number of characters. So here we go. So the book is looked at is Thinking German Translation, a course in translation method. So I could add this to our activity description. So I could put read and then paste the references. I might want to format it a little bit. And then I will add the blurb and the explanation in the notes because it's a little bit too long. So this book is a practical course in translation for advanced undergraduate students, etc. So it explains what it's about. And then here there's a comment by the practitioner. This book was very useful to help me refresh my knowledge of some translation techniques and refine my approach in my day-to-day translation work while keeping abreast of the latest translation theory. I've been referring to it regularly. I'll just show you if I was actually pasting everything, pasting everything in here, I would get an error message. So it's actually 200 characters, not 200 words. I think I said 200 words early on. It's 200 characters. So because you can't do that, then you can use the note section. I'll just remove that and then put it here. Now, we still need to provide some evidence. I have a fake receipt and I'll just add it. So would be, a receipt from a shop, basically, showing that you have purchased the book with the date as well. I mean, all activities should fall within the recertification period. So it has to fall within time. So the dates should match your recertification cycle. And here we go. I've added this activity here. It's attracting 10 points. We can see the notes here in this section, the references to the book. And again, the pie chart has updated as well. So there was skills, development, and knowledge. Again, in that particular example, we've already met the minimum requirement. The number would be higher normally. But as you can see, it's already ticked off. So now you can see which other activities need to be done.
Just before you move on to the next evidence, got a couple of questions, Aurelie, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely.
Must evidence be produced for each activity, like reading a book, listening to a radio broadcast, etc.? I think that's a yes.
That's a yes, it's recommended. If you don't have an evidence, as I explained earlier, it's okay to log in the activity. However, if there are not enough evidences of your practice, NATI may require you to provide with the evidences, or if your application is audited, you will also be asked to provide evidences. So the recommended process is to provide some form of evidence at the time of logging in the activity.
Again, another question, how long does assessment take once application for recertification has been submitted? I think we already said that takes up to 6 weeks.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's the average duration.
The PD points can be at any date covering those 3 years. Let's say there weren't many PDs earlier on in the 3-year period, and then there was much more towards the end. It can be at any date during those 3 years, right?
There are minimum requirements per year. We're looking at, in average, 120 points is the total, and we would be looking at 40 points a year. However, if it's not feasible and you've got more points in 1 year, that would be fine. Like, we would definitely consider on a case-by-case basis if there was really something that you haven't met. But if the number of points is reached, that shouldn't be an issue.
So yes, averaging 40 points for PD, let's say, and you should be aiming at that, because let's say you haven't done anything for the first 2.5 years, and then all of a sudden you have 3 months left to do 120 points worth of PD. So first of all, it might not be available, and secondly, it might even be too costly, and you might not even have enough time to do them. So I guess best to really spread it out over the 3 years.
Absolutely, and also it's better to maintain your skills over time rather than condense everything at the end of your cycle. The idea of the recertification process is to maintain a professional standard of knowledge of work practice. So that's why we've got minimum requirements per year. And that's the recommended approach again. Now, as I said, on a case-by-case basis, there may be considerations around that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I don't know how we're doing with time. Perhaps I should...
yeah, we've got another 5-10 minutes or so.
Yeah, so what about actually demonstrate some work practice?
Work practice.
Yeah, so I'll just go back here. And let's enter some work practice for the interpreter credential. So as you can see, it looks pretty much the same as for the PD logbook. So you can see your recertification dates as well, they're the same. Here you've got a progress bar. So so we're looking at an interpreter credential. So it shows a number of assignment or hours. The requirement is 4 per year. For over a whole period would be 120. And so as you log in work practice, you will see progress on this bar as well. So it updates automatically, just like the pie chart. So I will go straight into add work practice. So the look is the same. So you need to add the date of the assignment. So here, let's say,
which one did you want? I'll tell you.
I was thinking of the letter. I think it's the recertification letter. So for instance, let's say 15th of June, 2023. It's 2021. And just what we've got on the evidences. And John Smith has done actually over the whole period, he's done 645 hours of interpreting. So it's definitely the minimum requirement. And I think this was interpreting, for instance, ongoing interpreting assignments for all graduates.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so in this case, because it has been an ongoing contract with all graduates and he's done obviously a lot of regular work for them, John has asked for a letter from the agency, which will cover all the work that has been done. So this time I will drag and drop. So that's another way of adding files to your entry. So you can click and upload, or you can just drag and drop. So I'll open my folders there. And I've got a recertification letter. I might just open it so you see how it looks like. So we've got basically all the information. So John has been working since 2007 with all graduates. And now we've got specific information about the recertification period. So during that time, he has done that amount of assignments. And as you can see, we've got the name, we've got the practitioner number, and the languages are also mentioned. On top of that, he's been doing a lot of translation work. So he could reuse the same letter for his translation credential. It doesn't matter if it's an evidence that's used for another credential, as long as it's relevant, and in that case it is, he can certainly just use that letter for his translation credential. So I will just drag and drop it. There we go. And we can see here. You also have the option to delete it if you need to. And if you want to add another one, oh no, I thought that was, no, doesn't do anything here, sorry. Oh no, you can actually add, that's what I thought. So if you had a second one for the same assignment, you could add it here. And you just click on add. And what happens? Here we go. We've got our entry, and because he's met the minimum requirement already, he's basically done with that credential. He can still log in other assignments that he's done, and that's great because it can attract more points. But basically, the whole progress bar is already full.
I think it's quite important to point out here, if you're a prolific practitioner that does work a lot, and in this case, John has done 645 hours over the 3-year period. Now, John is also entitled to claim 20 points from the maintenance of language category, like we said earlier. So because he's done so much work, he can actually claim another 20 points from maintenance of language. And he can use the same letter as evidence, right?
Yes, that's right, for translation. And so I'm just looking at the catalog. So that would be a category 3.2. And for instance, if you interpreted over 250 hours, or you've done more than 250 assignments, then you can claim 20 points indeed. So there are different levels. If you've done between 200 and 250 hours, that would be 10 points. So it is worth, you know, logging in. I mean, here we've got the example with just the one letter, which is great, but you might not have that, and you might have lots of little assignments from a variety of clients. And if you log them in regularly, then you can also reach, you know, a higher number than the minimum requirement and get those extra points. So it's worth doing that.
Thank you. Just a reminder, now there are a lot of attendees, and we do appreciate all your questions. Unfortunately, we can't answer all of them live tonight. I'm answering as many as I can, but rest assured, we will compile all the questions afterwards, and then we will send you an email with all the answers on there. So eventually all the questions will be answered. So please do excuse us if we are not able to answer every single question. Thank you, Aurelie. Just a few more minutes left. Maybe we can upload another work practice criteria for translation this time.
Yes, so I'll just go back to the logbook. And here, so what do we have? I think we've got some into English. So let's look at this one here. And so it's the same presentation every time. I just go to add work practice. And so here in this case, John has done a translation assignment of 3,000 words. So that was completed on the 20th of October, 2021. It was 3,000 words. Now, this assignment was the translation of official, legal documents. And so as evidence of this, we will upload an invoice. Something I haven't mentioned during the presentation is that you shouldn't really upload anything that contains confidential information, such as an actual translation of the work you've done. NATI doesn't require that you do that, so it's more about an evidence of the work in question. It could be a work order, an invoice is okay. If there is sensitive information on the invoice, you can hide the name of the customer. That's absolutely fine. We should be able to clearly identify the assignment and that it is indeed an evidence of the assignment you're logging in. So I'll just do that. I'll click here and I'll add the invoice that we've got here. And then we just click on add. And we can see the progress to 3,000 words. So he still has another, in that example, 7,000 words to translate. So the process is the same, basically, for each assignment. And yeah.
And if he adds the reference letter that he got from all graduates onto the same, that'll take him over the.
That's right, absolutely.
The required.
So that was 15th of June 2023, and for the number of words, he had 27,345 words for into English, and that was ongoing translation work with all graduates. And so we can use the same letter again, which was this one. And we looked at it early on and we could clearly see the volume of words that was done for a particular direction. So that's the information we want, with the practitioner number as well and the name. And we just add it here, and we can see now he has met the minimum requirement, he's actually exceeded it. So for translation, if we refer to our catalog, sorry, I will have to have a quick look at it.
Yeah, he didn't quite make it there. He needed to do between 50 and 70,000 words to be able to get an extra 10 points PD, and anything more than 70,000 words is 20 points. So didn't quite make it there for translation for the extra PD points.
That's right. So do we have any questions about this?
Look, there's quite a lot of questions coming through. I think, is that it for our simulation? And then after this, I think once it's completed and then you are eligible to apply at that date.
That's right. So then when you're ready to submit your application, and as I said, I can't demonstrate it here, but you would go into submit an application and you'll be able to submit your recertification application there. There'll be a form to fill attached to that, and you'll submit everything via MyNati.
So go on to the MyNati portal, have a little bit of a play. If you go into your work practice requirements and PD requirements, you will actually see, as we saw before, if you can show that screen again, the My Logbook screen. As you can see there, it'll show you there when you go into the credential or the professional development, it'll show you when you need to apply. So as you can see there, your recertification eligibility date is for this candidate, 21st of June 2023. So they can actually start, they can apply for their recertification after that date if they have all the required points and the work requirements.
That's correct. And then once that,
Sorry, just a question that comes through.
Yeah, sure.
What happens to the certification if a person achieves enough points but does not cover all the categories? For example, 120 points in just 2 categories, not 3.
Well, there's a minimum requirement for each category. So we might ask for evidence of you know, what, if anything has been done for the other categories which hasn't been logged in. To be on a case-by-case basis, but there is a requirement of a minimum of 30 points per category. So they each practitioner should actually acquire a number of points for each category. That might be a case where the application is rejected, or on a case-by-case basis, the practitioner might be given an extension to get the extra points, but that would be only on an individual basis, so it's not a general approach.
If you have a look at your professional development category that you can download from either this app or from the NAATI website or from the portal, you can see that it clearly states that you have to have a minimum of 30 points from each category. That'll bring it to 90 points. And then you can just make it up from whichever category up to a minimum of 120 points. But you do have to reach a minimum of 30 points from each category. So you can't have 300 points from industry engagement and you only have 10 points from maintenance of language. It doesn't
That's
really
right.
kind of say, but I've got so much from here, can you just let me get away with 10 points from here? I don't think it works that way, right?
No, you have to meet the minimum requirement of 30 points. Yeah.
And also a comment for you, Aurélie. Great insight into the NAATI portal. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anything else we need to demonstrate, Aurélie, you think?
Well, I suggest you look into my credentials. Once you've got your credentials, let's see if it works. Yes, so this is how it looks like. So when you have active credentials, you'll be able to see them in that section, and you can download the documents that are related to a particular credential. So for instance, you can download your certification letter, which you get either once you've just passed your test or once you've recertified, and then you get also your certificate. So I'll just open those. So the certificate looks like this. So you can clearly see your recertification, your certification period or your credentials validity period, and for which direction. And the letter would just basically say that you have been awarded the credentials, etc.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you and your IT team who have been so kind to create this test account for us. I think it makes it very easy and accessible for our practitioners to now really know and understand what needs to be done to be able to recertify. So really thank you for putting in the time and the effort.
Thank you, my pleasure. I hope it's been helpful, and yeah, I'm looking forward to look at the extra questions we might not have been able to answer today, and always happy to help. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Just one last question that just came through. What's the cost for recertification?
So at the moment it's $99, and that's part of the special circumstances we living at the moment. The standard fee is $198 otherwise.
Okay, well, good. You get a COVID-19 discount of $99. And we said that within that recertification fee, you have your stamp. So your stamp is given free of charge if you're a translator, and you also get your NAATI ID as well.
Yes, if you're an interpreter. So for translators, the stamp, and for interpreters, it's the ID card, and you have your certificate and your letter on top of that, which is accessible from your portal at no extra cost. Like the certificate doesn't cost extra.
Again, thank you very much, Aurélie. Interpreters, translators, thank you so much for attending tonight in such large numbers. I hope that we were able to shed some light on your questions and your inquiries. We have been getting a lot of inquiries about how to recertify, how to claim PD points. So I hope that this addresses all those questions and concerns. This video will be made available to you. You will get an email pretty soon, I think tomorrow or within the next 48 hours or so. The video will be made available to you. So if there's any points that you want to go back and re-watch, if you wanted to do a little bit of a recap, it will be made available for you, and also it'll be made available on the NAATI YouTube page, as well as the Conversations All Graduates YouTube page, which you can subscribe to and get a whole bunch of TNI related resources there. Aurelie, thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you very much, interpreters and translators out there. Please remember to stay safe and take care of yourself and your family, and all the best. We hope to see you in the next webinar. Thank you.